Hello, Andrea. Today we're going to talk about Tipline. Did Hallmark dial up a great new mystery series, or did they dial a wrong number?
I love it.
We're going to
Great
find
intro.
out. This is Eric.
This is Andrea.
That's Hallmark Mysteries and
And
more.
more.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel. Okay, we have a mystery that's actually been out for a while, which we're going to
Mhm.
get to. We both watched it on the app and been biting our tongues, not letting each other know, but I think we both probably have a feeling how the other feels, but we have not revealed to each other, so it will be a little bit of a surprise. But before we get going, I was listening to Dara over there in Dear Hallmark, and she had a really interesting podcast recently where she talked about how the rom-com so far in 2024 just maybe have not been top tier for the most part. There's been a couple. Of course, this last weekend, I think maybe made up for the whole year with Savoring Paris, but for the most part, they've been kind of underwhelming. But we've been fortunate because we focus on the mysteries, and I think we can agree there's one mystery that we think could use a little bit of reworking. But other than that, mysteries have been pretty darn solid. Even the Hannah Swenson and the Curious Caterer, which are, not new ones, but the continuations, they did some really good twists on those. So I don't know. What do you think? Because I know we both review the rom-coms over in our other, Instagram channel.
Yeah, I was just pulling up to see, I'm like, what has aired this year? Just to kind of see what I've rated everything. And besides like The Lovey with Jane Austen, which was either a hit or a miss for people, depending on if that was their jam. It's an equal split 4-4 for me because I didn't review Maze because I heard the movies were so bad. And
Oh,
I
that's
do a
right.
poll on my Instagram, and the poll was the lowest I've ever seen two Hallmark movies, period. Like, and I always ask a poll, what do people think? And I have a really good response. And so it's a good sample size. And it was 1-2 was the dominant one, which is like the worst that people are going to give the movies. So I skipped them, and I still had people, I mean, everyone who actually watched it were like, you would hate this, don't watch it. So I never watched those two. So it would be probably, I liked 4 and 6 were not good. Like 1 to 2 star, not good. Not even like a little, they were okay, but like we are teetering on very bad movies, like waste your time movies. So it is interesting to see. And they hadn't, I mean, they only had 2 new movies in May. So I, as we had talked about, a little bit before off air, is the writer's strike, I think, is showing. And we have a lot of Johnson Productions. And if people aren't familiar with them, they might not be the highest quality. And I think there was a good chunk of those that had been aired this last probably few months. So that also probably plays a factor into people's likings of the movies or not.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, and I don't think a lot of people understand that there's a difference between the Hallmark movies that they do and then the acquisitions, and they sort of lump them all together. And as you become a little more aware, more often than not, you can kind of get a feel for, oh, that's an acquisition movie. Not always, but there's definite like those ones that are clunkers are usually acquisitions. Hallmark doesn't really make a clunker. They may make ones that are not, you know, that like on your scale. They may be the threes or something
Yeah.
like that. But rarely ever do they make a movie that's going to be a 1-2.
And I
So
don't think most of the mysteries are not acquired. Those are all Hallmark produced, and
I
Hallmark
don't
has
think
a
any,
big hand on. Yeah, I don't
I
know
could
if
be
there's
wrong, but I
any.
don't think any of them are,
I
right?
don't think so either. And so that's probably also where we feel, we had talked too of the mystery seemingly are a little bit stronger than the regular Hallmark movies. And that's probably a big reason why is because Hallmark is producing them. And, our next one isn't until Signed, Sealed, Delivered, which is in July 12th. So after today's movie that we're going to talk about, we have another kind of long stretch of no movies, which we had talked about last episode of just like where are these movies that are supposedly rumored to have maybe already been filmed? Are they going to give them to us this year, or are they saving them for next year? Or what is kind of that outlook? And it
I,
is yet unknown.
I had a talk with Georgia, our friend who gives us a lot of the behind the scenes. She writes about Hallmark and all that, so she tends to be in the know. And I still think Cases has to come out,
In
but
July?
some point, yeah, some point before August. But she seems to think that they're just Hallmark's going to be circling the wagons around Christmas in July, and so they're
Mm.
not going to let really the Mystery Channel compete too much with it. So I don't know. It makes sense, but also Cases has just been sitting around so long, and so many people want to see it. So I don't know.
That is tough. I mean, that especially with, we had the confirmed Jane mystery supposedly coming.
Right?
And I think Jodie Sweetin had shared she was filming, I want to say a while ago as well. So like at some point we have to be getting some sequels to these. So
Yeah.
hopefully sooner than later. But again, we're going to be crunched up into the Christmas. And then, Georgia had shared with me too as well about, I'd asked, are they going to do Christmas movies on the Hallmark Mystery Channel? What is that going to look like? And by the looks of it, it seems like they're going to continue Miracles of Christmas, is what they had said in their press release when they released that they were doing this Hallmark Mystery Channel. So it
All
sounds like
right.
we're going to still potentially get them with a few mysteries thrown in, probably not mysteries that we're used to reviewing, more like signed, sealed, delivered type mysteries. So
Well,
we'll
that
see.
that Mistletoe Mysteries, which is the Audible that with
Yeah.
Sarah Drew, I believe that's actually a series. It's not just a single episode. So I think that's I don't know how many, if it's like a 3 episode thing or four, whatever it is. So that may take up a little bit of the holidays because obviously that's Christmas based. I'm wondering if we get another one. What was the Victor Webster, Erica Cerna one?
Yeah.
The like a
Yeah.
little lighthearted type one, maybe that will come on over there too. But yeah, maybe we get those dramas that come and hit marks they need a place. And I don't think that Hallmark family has the coverage, all the households that they need for those movies. So even though, Hallmark Channel is the biggest audience, but then Mystery, and then I think it's a pretty big drop off. So I would not be surprised. Because, at the end of the day, and we kind of forget it as fans, it is a business. They do have to make money to keep making movies. So they have to make those decisions that sometimes as fans, we were not like in agreement with, but they know what they're doing. So,
And that's one of the reasons that acquired movies are because they're cheaper to acquire versus producing their own. So
right.
that's a big business decision there. Maybe we'll get a Jane mystery that is Christmas themed because they do have that Hannah Swenson plum pudding one. So maybe they'll throw a little one of them. Maybe that's what she filmed. That'd be kind of fun.
There.
I'd be
All
game for
right.
that.
All right. I did have over on my Reddit someone send me a little DM saying, I don't know what is wrong with your co-host Andrea because Jane Mysteries is terrible. And I was like, well,
Hey,
I
at
don't,
least I know I am one of the few who really loved it.
there's like
There's
I'll
got to
say
be some of us.
I'm a
That's why
middle
I'll
of the
still be
road,
renew it.
middle of the road. I want more, but there's definitely like when we post things, there's a chunk of people who like it. So
See, we all
I
love it.
don't think you're crazy. You're not insane. So
Take it.
I think you like I say, yeah, you have it ranked a little higher than I do. But all right. Well, should we get talking about Tipline finally? Weeks in the making.
Yeah. All right. So here's a little recap. A cryptic call about a planned jewelry heist draws a Detroit Free Press tip line operator, Maddie Moore, into a dangerous homicide case alongside a newly promoted detective. Bum, bum, bum. So, who wants to go first? Who's sharing first? What did
Uh,
we think?
I'll go
Okay.
because this is Detroit. I'm from
Mhm.
Detroit, so as soon as I saw that first press release, I had been anxious and I had a high bar set. But Andrew, I have a question for you.
Mm.
What do I think of Gourmet Detective?
You love it. It's your favorite.
Yes, and I will say this had to me all those Gourmet Detective
Hmm.
feels and like the premise of it. You had that citizen who gets pulled into the case with the begrudging, detective because the captain thinks it's such a good idea, pairs them together, and while they start out a little snooty, they pretty quickly get working together. So you don't have to deal with that whole macho detective thing. It obviously flip-flops, right? One of the things I love about Gourmet Detective, and I wish they could do it again is get that really strong female detective. But whatever, my feminism aside, I'll just go with this. And I think they nailed it. I gave it a 4.5, and I was teetering with the 5 or 4.75, but there's always things that could be better. Like when they started out and she went and did the little number swap on the rooms. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be so disappointed in this movie. You can't just have, rooms going 5, 6, 7, 9, 8, 10, right? Like, obviously that's whatever. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be corny. It's going to ruin it. But no, by the next scene when they show Maddie in the tip room and she's got, I think it's her sub or whatever, and she's just chomping away. Like you never see Hallmark. Like if they're eating, it's kind of whatever. But she is like almost food falling out of her mouth, eating as she's talking. I loved that scene. It was so not Hallmarky and so fun. And it just set Maddie, excuse me. Maggie is obviously true detective or gourmet
Gourmet.
detective. But it just set Maddie all the way, up for what she was. And she was just quirky. I loved her. She had this also that false bravado where she thought she knew stuff. And then you had, Beeks had to like sort of talk, yeah, that's actually illegal, to do that or whatever. And I just found her so fun. And like I said, I at first was like, oh no, oh no. And it quickly turned for me. I also, one of the pet peeves, and I kind of touched on it, is that detective who just remains being kind of the jerk, and that conflict and that tension between the two just extends for like 2 episodes or something like that before they start trusting each other. And I really liked how he quickly said, okay, I think she knows what she's talking about in her own little quirky way, and I have to keep her in line and stuff. So I really enjoyed that. And plus she had her like little lines in there, like when they're at the jewelry and they're trying to pretend like they're this married couple for the engagement ring, and the guy calls, which is hilarious. I'm about to be robbed. And then they come bursting in, and she's like, what? We're the cops. Like, actually, you're not. But I loved how she just was so deranged. And at the end, how she started reading the rights and forgot them and had to be coached to, what they were. And then at the, Beaks, like the captain, was this all legit? It's like, I think it may be. So they actually, had fun with themselves, knowing that she's not really the detective, but doing her stuff. And so I thought they actually had fun with it rather than taking it too serious. So I could go on and on. The last thing I'll say is I thought Shauna Mayer is the costume designer for this movie. I loved what they did with Maddie. I thought she was in that like little weird, quirky. Her clothes just matched her personality so perfectly. Now I don't see you walking around the streets of Minneapolis wearing her outfits, but for Maddie, I thought it was absolutely perfect. So I have all superlatives to say about the movie. They're just like obviously some little weird, quirky things, but that's what kept it from being a 5. So I probably have not been this totally excited since Cases, which I think was last year, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
there's a movie where I was just like, I really don't find fault in it much at all.
The
So
things you observed are very comical to me. That the hotel room and her eating. Like, I didn't even pay attention to. I mean, I obviously paid attention to the
you
hotel
didn't the
thing, but
hotel room thing you didn't at the beginning when she's
I
like,
mean,
oh, I'm
I
gonna
was
swap the
watching, but
numbers.
I didn't overthink it, I feel. And the
I watched
food,
it
I
the
didn't
first
notice
time.
her.
Oh, it's like, come
So
on,
weird. So
like,
weird.
yeah, just don't eat that way in a Hallmark movie. In
Oh,
fact,
it's
half the
so
time,
weird,
like, go
Eric.
back to the Bill Elliott days, and I don't think you were allowed to eat food.
Bill
So
Abbott.
Bill Abbott, yeah, whatever, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Well, okay.
all right, where were
Okay.
you? Where were you? You're probably a
Well,
2 then.
um, the first time I watched it, I was like, because I know, Georgia has messaged me and she's like, I loved it. So I was like, okay. I gave it like a 3 the first time I watched it. I was like, oh, that's okay. Then I watched it again. I was like, oh, it's like 3.5. and then I watched it again, and I gave it a 4. So every time I watched it, so I ended up at a 4 because I watched it 3 times.
Watch it one more
Um,
time and you'll notice her eating.
I know. I'm like, I keep going up half a star. So I feel like this to me started how Mystery 101. I really wasn't a big fan of that first episode. Like it was okay. And Mystery 101 is not like one of my favorites. I enjoy it, but it's not like on
Same.
the Mount Everest for myself. And so that first one, I was kind of like, I see it. People love it. I'm just not as super into it. That's how I kind of feel about this one. I did give it 4 because I still like it. But caveat, I feel like this has so much more potential and growth that I can see this concept of those two together. I really enjoyed the leads together. I like that she's at the hotel because I feel like you can pull so many threads of fun mysteries from just her having that as a full-time job, because you're going to have so many quirky people coming in and out and so many fun background stories. And then having the tip line at night, having them work together. I thought their boss was fun. Um, I loved the claw machine in the beginning. Like that had me in when they were at the mall. Like I was like, how fun is this? Like old school mall vibes with the claw machine. And I enjoyed that premise. I was super sad. This is probably the saddest I've ever been about having someone murdered. Like that little old man. I was like, no, they killed the sweetest looking guy. Like they chose him as the victim. That was devastating to me, honestly, when I was like, wait, he's not going to wake up. What? This poor man. So that one
But
had
I will
me
say,
like
but they did do a good job
shook.
actually fitting it into the reason of the murder, right?
100%. a hundred
So
percent.
yeah, yeah,
Because then I was like, oh, so then the mall guy was not murdered. It was just a
right.
dark gun and he woke up. Okay, that's great. Because at first I thought then she was just on this killing spree. And
Right.
then you're like, oh, okay, so he was okay. This guy wasn't. I did enjoy how they tied all that together. I think they did a really good job of that for some of the mysteries, they can have those loose ends, but I think that they had a good thread line going through the whole thing. I, of course, am a cat person, so I enjoyed the cat neighbors and her helping with
Of course
them
he did.
and seeing the cats on screen. I'm like, this is kind of fun. I would be game for them as being kind of the neighbors and just, having a couple scenes every movie. So again, I feel like this, if you were maybe on that 3 boat, because I know that there was some, having looked at my poll, maybe try it again. And this, I think, has a lot of, again, potential to go. It did feel a little darker in the way it was filmed again, which, is not my favorite, but it, also Mystery 101. I feel like that also was filmed a little darker, some of them, but then some of them they lighten it up a little. So maybe having a little blend of that can help with some of the lighting.
But if you think about it, it's like mystery or it's the tip line thing, right? So it all happens at night because their day
Yeah.
job is there.
Yeah.
So for the most part,
It needs
it
to be.
it does have to be, right? So it
Yeah.
does kind of fit. Though there is a little, like I say, the jewelry scene and things like that. All right, so I forget what, and I should remember, what did she name the little kitten she found at the end? Like,
I should have wrote that down too.
uh,
Um,
it,
gosh,
we'll have to look it up. We'll post it. But
that can be
I
a
thought that was
little
like super
mystery
cute.
question for us on Instagram. People can
There we
guess.
go. We'll make that our trivia Tuesday trivia next week.
Yeah. Well, what about the mystery itself? I just kind of mentioned it. What do you think of the mystery?
Kind of like what we just said. I thought that the mystery was okay. It was not this one where I was going, oh, left, right. I did not. I kind of thought it was who it was. I guess I don't even know if we have to keep spoilers because it's been on the app forever and it's already aired. So, I thought it could be her, but then I thought they did enough of a good job of keeping me from totally knowing it was her. And, even up until the end, a couple little left turns. But this was the one where we've talked before where I thought the characters were so interesting. I thought just the overall story, the subplot, we talked about how sometimes they put these subplots in that just sort of distract, like, and
And you
take
don't care
away too
about.
much.
Yeah.
Whereas, like we said, the little cat caper, which I thought the cat kidnapping was the best mystery. Like, I don't want to say it was like a better mystery, but I had so much fun with her solving that on her own, right? And how they kept that in there and it progressed the story. Whereas like when we just did family practice, the whole thing with the kids and
The
the
dog.
the get the dog with the not I'm a dog guy, so I love the dogs, but that just sort of distracted. Whereas this, it all went along. And the mystery, like I said, it was interesting enough. And like we just said, with the, tying it in, like oh, she wasn't trying to kill anybody. She just sort of got in over her head and it was kind of accidental. And that would go back to True Justice at the beginning of the year, where you kind of felt a little empathy
Yeah.
for the murderer, right? She was this kid. Now, this is why I don't give it the 5. You wouldn't lose your track scholarship over an injury. Schools have to continue you through your graduation and stuff like that. So whatever. Hallmark universe, we let things go, right? Um,
I don't know. I don't that
but
I don't know,
the
Eric.
so little things like that, but all in all, I thought it was it was a good mystery. It wasn't the whoa kind of thing. The like Crimes of Fashion, I think for me at least, on the first watch, was the first one where I would this year, where I was just like, that mystery was nailed, right? Whereas this one felt pretty, still felt pretty good. I don't know, what about you?
Well, I did not solve this. I thought it was really clever. I thought it
I
was
didn't
Ron.
either. I said I
I know.
thought it, like, I'm like,
I didn't even think it.
but I didn't really think, like, at the end. So,
I thought it was Ron the plumber when he put up his tool kit on the
oh
desk and she was looking through it. So he is always a guy who's usually the murderer in a lot of the mysteries. So he's always kind of that character thrown in. So I was like, oh no, they did a super predictable guy again. So it did throw me off. So maybe they did that. And listening to us, they're like, let's throw in someone who's always the murderer and have him not be the murderer, because that did get me.
no, wait. Are we
Um,
saying the character, that type of character, is always the murderer,
No,
or
he is
that actor guy?
that actor, just
Oh
like
wait,
our other actor in the Crime Times. He's always thrown into these
All right,
movies
I'm
and
gonna have to
usually
look
is the
back at
killer.
him and see who he is.
So that's where I was thinking it was him. And then especially with like his like tool
Right,
thingy, and then she was finding stuff. So I was like, oh, maybe he is the one cutting into the
right,
walls
right.
because he has that capability to do that.
Yep,
So I was thinking it was him, but then I was, as the movie went on, I'm like, well, I don't. This isn't. How does that going to connect? That doesn't necessarily
right.
make sense. I was kind of like, I didn't have anyone else besides him. So I don't know about the track scholarship. I feel like maybe you would, depending on sports, because my husband works with a lot of, I mean, players who are now playing D1, and you could get redshirted, but for like a major sport, like he has an athlete who was redshirted because they were injured, but that was basketball. I don't know if track athletes, if universities take care of
Well,
those,
a
they're
lot of
not
the
as
I
big
will
of a
say,
revenue sport.
right, a lot of those also scholarships are not like your
Guaranteed.
D1
Right.
basketball, football ones, right? Those are
Right.
ones where it's you get like 1/4% or quarter of your tuition, and then you get like in-state tuition and guaranteed financial aid type thing.
As
So
long
that,
as
like,
you're on the team. But
for the
then if you can't
non-revenues,
play,
I
what happens there? That's a great question, because I don't know
I
if you
don't
would,
know.
for a non-revenue
Right,
track. Would
right,
that be a rev? That's not a big generator for the school.
right. I know
So
they do it,
that's where,
like, obviously, like you said, for the big two,
yeah.
football,
And
basketball,
who
but
knows? Maybe she was with D2 and you're going to have even more. Like they're not going to pay for that if you're not
yeah,
on the team. So I found that to be kind of interesting how it tied together, because that's where I kind of got thrown off when the dart gun was in the guy, her
right.
boyfriend's locker. And then I was like, well, how does that connect with Ron the plumber? Not sure how this is all tying in. That's where it started to lose me, when I'm like, I don't think my guess is right.
Uh,
So I
I
enjoyed
knew
it.
I knew it couldn't have been him, because he was just too, like, it was Beak's little guy that he's rehabilitating and stuff.
Yes.
So I knew it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been actually him. What was his name?
Yep.
Not, was it Toby or something? I forget what it was,
Yeah,
something
I
like
think it
that.
was
So I knew it couldn't have been Toby. So that's when I was like, all right, it's got to
getting
be
set
her,
up.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, but I thought,
Well,
like I said, I still think it was good. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong.
What about the romance? How
What
did that work
you
for you?
didn't say about the cat caper? Like, where was that on your mystery thing of her solving that case? That was a
I
whole
thought
thing
it was
about
cute.
being the mom or whatever. Uh, like, that was crazy.
Honestly,
That was just crazy.
was not paying as much attention to the actual mystery as me looking at the cats. I was more like, oh, look at that pretty white cat. It is
Uh,
so cute. That's what I was mostly doing, because as I was watching it for the third time, I'm like, oh, I did miss some stuff the first two times because I was watching the cats.
well, as I've always said, my wife's a big ID channel, and there's a show that just freaks me out called Fear Thy Neighbor. And
Well,
it's like of crazy neighbors, but usually it ends in murder, not
so
catnapping and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm like thinking about those, like being like what it's like living next to someone who obviously they hate each other and stuff. So, but all around a cat.
oh man.
All right, romance. Did you get any romance here in the romance roundup?
I thought that I had really good chemistry. Like, I think that, there wasn't like smoldering chemistry, but I thought it was like cute banter. They have stuff that they could work on in future episodes. I really liked them at all the different, the jewelry shop, the pawn shop, and, how they would play, their, hey, husband and wife, we're buying this for your mom. And I thought that was really cute. So it was more kind of that friend banter, but not saying that I don't see potential in this as a romantic pairing in the future.
I agree 100%. And I think that works to its advantage.
Yeah.
Kind of once again, what do we want in this first episode? We want it just to sort of set the table. And that's where I think they did good. They didn't bother trying to go too much into sexual tension and all of that. They obviously, like you said, they developed a good chemistry where they clearly got along and valued each other. And that's all we need in that first episode, right? Now you don't need to keep dragging things on for 7 episodes. Will they, won't they? A little uh crossword was one where they dragged it on kind of a long ways. But so I thought they just developed great chemistry, but not romance chemistry. But they were very cute. I thought they were very cute together. And I'll say and I probably will get all the Hardys off of me. I'm usually not like the biggest Chris McNally fan. In this one though, this this was the role I think he is built for. He was great in this role. I loved him. He was kind of like the straight man to her, wackiness and stuff, but he still was funny, right? But he did it in his understated way. And so yeah, I thought they worked perfect together side by side.
Well, what about characters? What character were you? There's so many to pick from, I thought, in this movie.
I agree, but for me, there was but one. Captain
Ooh.
Nyland, or however you say her name. She just cracked me up with this, like, you know, whatever the hell, the chaos all around her. And she's just like, whatever. Like when she walks out after he's been shot, with the hot sauce when she jumps on him and it's the car backfiring and you got Maddie laying on top of him. She just looks like, oh, okay. And like walks on like no big deal. This isn't the strangest thing I've seen today. And just yeah, how she pairs them together and everything. I found her character that perfect, second tier one that'll keep the things going, stuck them together and despite him rolling his eyes and she's like, oh, you just deal with that, why don't you, and stuff. So I loved her character.
That is funny. I loved that scene with the hot sauce. I thought that was so good. And again, I agree with you. She totally nailed that line of coming out and like looking at them, being like, and just kept it moving. And I'm like, that is perfectly played. Well, mine also is in the police department was Detective Grazer. So I loved,
The retiring guy.
yes, I found him to be awesome. I mean, again, there were so many to pick from. I'm like, gosh, who do I choose? And so, having watched it a few times, I'm like, I thought his scenes were great, and like his advice as his retirement party, and just
Yep.
having him be. And it is so. If anyone's kind of been, just hey, I just finished school. I'm going to use all of this stuff that I studied for, and in my book it says to do X, Y, Z, and then actually getting into the field, and you're like, yeah, that what you just did, it pertains nothing to your actual job, which I think is so relatable in so many careers. Like, hey, in the book it says this, but then when you actually work with humans, you're like, they don't follow the textbook.
Well, hopefully your mentor is not quite as burnout and
No,
cynical as
no.
he is.
But then the hot sauce and how they tied that back into that
Right.
scene, I thought that was clever that they didn't just kind of do it as a throwaway one-time funny scene. It did come back in the movie. And even him taking Maddie's tips, on the phone, and he clearly is just like,
Oh,
yeah,
wait, remind me of that one. Russell.
yep. So I thought he was a great comic relief, and he was just in it for a little bit, but I think they played well with like, hey, this is kind of the serious movie, but we have the quirky lead. So we have thrown in a couple other quirky characters that are going to bring up some laughs, because I like to have some funny scenes in my mysteries and not be so super straight laced and never laugh. So I enjoyed
Uh,
having those.
yeah, I think this one, while it had some fun to it, it wasn't quite as like I would say Cases is more a comedic mystery, whereas this one just had a lot of fun to it, but it wasn't a comedic, or even Crime Time. I thought Crime Time was much more of a comedy
Yeah.
mystery, I think, than
Yep.
this one, where this one just had enough fun in it and quirky characters. Well, we didn't talk about Mason, who
No.
was I
He
like
I
the funny
was
thing is I watched the whole thing and I had no idea. I'm like, the first watch, I'm like, where was Mason?
really?
And it
You
wasn't
didn't
until I watched the second one. I think
Oh,
Wyatt is his name, if I'm not mistaken.
I picked him
Um,
out right away.
and but I tell you what, Mason, I forget what his real name is, Riley something, I think. But I don't know how old the guy is, but he can look like he's 16 and he can look like he's 30, I guess. He's somewhere in that range. Because he definitely looked younger in this than he does
Oh
in
yeah.
Curious. I liked his
Yeah.
character way better in this than Curious too. So
I don't mind how they've
he had
evolved him in
competency.
Curious. So I don't mind they've, made him better in
He's
Curious.
he was definitely the best in the last one,
Yeah. Yeah.
but still.
Well, what about trivia? What trivia
Okay,
do you have?
so I did say this was Detroit.
Oh boy.
However, they did a lot of great B-roll Detroit, but it was filmed in Vancouver. Little disappointing there because I, I guess Vancouver still has to be cheaper. Everyone's there, all the film crews, this, that, and the other. But it would have been very nice to have it in Detroit. But the hotel she worked at was the Regent Kingsley, which I'm assuming is a fictitious hotel. However, there is the Kingsley Inn in
Mm.
Detroit, and that's where my brother had his bar mitzvah, and it was sort of like I don't know, like obviously this was years and years ago, so I don't know what it was, but it was sort of like the fancy hotel out in the burbs, but like the little fancy hotel where you do your events and things like that. So when I saw that name, I'm like, ooh, I wonder there. And like some of the streets were real, some of the streets I don't know if they went there, but I was like kind of like how you get all these mysteries in Minnesota, so you can like get all excited and stuff. Where for me, I was like watching it and I was on this like different level of, oh, is this Detroit? Is this really what's going on and stuff? So, but
That's fun.
I really enjoyed having that Detroit feel, even though it was all B-roll.
Well, I have two factual errors. One you posted on Instagram. When asked why the soon-to-be ex-wife and the dead jewelry store owner were divorcing, they said reconcilable differences. And then another one at 1645, when the store owner enters, the street address number can be seen above the door as 115. But when the call comes in over the app to report the robbery, the dispatcher goes to 1710 Big Street. So went to the wrong place.
Ooh, kind of like The Departed there.
Yes.
Um,
So that's a little fun little thing.
So what's interesting about that reconcilable differences is Georgia, man, just Georgia should have been on today. Um, she actually was trying to defend it as being on purpose. So she contacted the writer, and it definitely was an error. It was not written as reconcilable
Funny.
differences.
Oh, funny.
Because she thought it was maybe a foreshadowing, like they would reconcile or something like that. But
Interesting.
so yeah, so it was not a intended
That
thing. So
probably
yeah.
wasn't either. I got one more because this one I actually, as I was reading kind of the different things, this one I want to say because I asked you about this just last night. So there's also an error in geography. So the detectives from the Detroit, Michigan PD search records for other jewelry store thefts with the same kind of what just happened. So, one resulting in the death of jeweler Joseph Tremonti. They include a possible connection to a robbery in Cleveland, Ohio, implying that Cleveland is within the Detroit metro area when actually it's a 3-hour drive. So the connection there, that's why I text you because they kind of I'm like they kept going back to it because when I shut the movie off last night, they pulled it
Uh,
back into Ohio and I'm like, why don't you keep throwing back to that Cleveland, Ohio? But that's where the movie started with the mall cop being kind of,
yeah.
tranquilized. So then I was like, well, how does then in my head I'm like, was this girl was she in college in Cleveland and then she came here? And so obviously that was an error looking at that list. Another one of just like that how close are they? That's why I asked you. I'm like, maybe they are closer than I
See,
thought, but
I didn't get that. I kind of thought it was like they're just doing a Midwest search of similar things, but maybe, I don't know. I didn't get that. When I watch it my third time, maybe I'll pick that up. So
that's when I picked it up because I'm like, why do they keep
the,
bringing back Cleveland? And then actually they shouldn't have. Looking at this,
like,
that was another error.
yeah, yeah, it would have been Toledo. If they wanted to do that, it should have been Toledo because Toledo is
That's what this thing
essentially
said.
South
Yep.
Detroit,
Yep.
you know,
That's
for all
exactly
intents and
what that
purposes.
description said. They probably
Yeah.
missed and put Cleveland instead of Toledo.
So
So again, little things like that, which I mean, do we catch it? That one I did catch just because I'm like, I don't I don't think they're very close. Why do they keep trying to tell us that she was in Cleveland and there's connected? But
yeah, that would be especially for like a night heist and things like that. That would be a pretty elaborate, planned out thing
yeah,
because she has to figure out all the
how do I get
details
there?
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what about Hallmark and Chill? What do you got recommendation wise?
I let off with it and I'll say it. It's got all the vibes for me of Gourmet Detective.
Mm.
The way that they work together, the 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 citizen who thinks they're actually a detective, where she really does believe like, oh, am I getting a badge? I'll get my taser, and all that sort of things like that. So, and I think Henry is very much too where he is like, oh, I'm on the force. So, and then just the chemistry between the two of them, I found a similar type uh, vibe there. So, I had a lot of Gourmet Detective vibes from this, which for me, as everyone knows, is a huge compliment.
Well, I would say Mystery 101 if I had to pick a series, just because I feel like this has potential to grow. Um, now, if I'm going to
Mystery,
say
it doesn't
a,
have very much humor in it, though.
I think Christopher Polaha has some good
Uh,
little zingers thrown in there. Like he has some good comedy,
yeah,
I
all
think.
right. There's no quirk
And the
though to it.
dad, Jill Wagner's dad, like he's kind of funny at times.
All right.
Maybe.
It's
Well,
you can do whatever you want to do. You could put this onto Jane or Haunted Harmony. I'm not gonna. You get to do wherever you want to go.
I would also say Murder She Wrote, season 4, episode 11.
Weird.
Doom with the Gloom. Jessica and her nephew get more than they expect while staying at a posh New York hotel managed by Grady's old frat buddy. And the friend, this is actually the picture I sent you. So the friend he was in All My Children. I cannot remember the actor's name. He has since passed, but he was married to the actress he was married to on All My Children. And in it, he is dating a woman who looks old enough to be his grandmother. That's the picture I think I sent to you that you would like this episode. So maybe you should watch this episode
All
because you
right.
always want an older woman with a younger man. And this younger man is in his 20s, and this woman is probably close to in her late 60s, 70s. So there you go. There is your movie for you or episode for you to watch,
Or
Eric.
Savoring Paris. We got that when she went for her little boy toy, Gaston.
Oh,
She's like, yeah, I know it's
yeah.
not serious, but I'm just gonna have fun. So
See, and I didn't even, I mean, looking at them, I wouldn't have thought that there's that big of an age difference. But trust me, in this Murder She Wrote episode, you will be like, there's an age difference there.
I just want equality. So it's fine. All right.
Well, what about Fan Corner? Do you have any messages that you wanted to
I do.
share?
So we had on the website a message that came through that just was absolutely awesome from Stacy Sonnenberg. And it says, my mom and I love, all capital letters, Hallmark mysteries, and desperately wanted to talk about them with somebody other than ourselves. When we found your podcast, it is awesome. And we love your banter and your opinions. It makes our car rides something we look forward to. We just signed up for the Hallmark Christmas Experience weekend #1, and we hope one or both of you will be there. Thank you for what you do. So just absolutely,
That's
when
so
we get
nice.
comments like that, yes, it just right to the heart. It's great because obviously we're Hallmark mystery geeks and we admit it and love talking about it, but it is awesome. And we've got to know people through the community and stuff who have an equal passion. And it's just so much fun talking because I don't think our spouses are quite as, in on the
No.
Hallmark as we are. So it's great having people who you can talk and share these things with. So, but it
Yes.
was such a nice
Oh,
thing. So thank you, Stacy.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, how about
Um,
how's the poll going?
Well, here are the poll results that I had. So 5 out of 5, 33%. 4 out of 5, 39%. 3 out of 5, 19%. And then 1/2, not great, 8%. So the majority, I would say, lived in that 4 to 5/5. So
Yeah, 3/4, basically.
yeah. And that was the same as the Paris movie, over the weekend. That one also had great reviews. So a good Hallmark movie weekend this past weekend. If you haven't watched either, I would suggest maybe checking both out based on these poll results.
So one of the interesting things I've been starting to do is I go when Hallmark posts their things about, the movies, I start reading the comments. I never really used to read their comments before
Oh,
because and it's funny how usually, especially in our mysteries, it's always, you know, I hate you, you killed mystery 101, or, something like along those lines, or you don't make any good mysteries anymore, bring back, 2017, all that stuff. And I will say, because this has had a very long lead time, a lot of people got to see it on the app, that it has been pretty much universally great comments on their posts, which I take that as a good sign. I talked to Holland yesterday, and it's on our podcast today, and I asked if she had heard of how the ratings were to know, and I have to assume this was a pretty good hit for them, and we'll see.
I mean, I think Chris McNally is going to help, just having the When Calls the Heart people, clamoring to have him in something. And so I think that's a really good, smart move by Hallmark to put him in a mystery, because you're going to automatically have built-in fans. Just like Bethany Joy Lenz, if you throw her in a mystery, yes, please. Like, that just
Okay.
elevates the mystery right there.
All right. Do you want to blow up the
Oh no.
entire Hallmark universe? Put her and Christopher Plaha in a mystery together, because, at least my opinion, those are the two most talented actors by far on Hallmark. And it doesn't knock anybody else, right?
I completely
They are
agree.
just technically,
They're
and
just
you and I
good.
talked about this, right? Like Bethany, like the way she doesn't even have to do, like I talked about in Hallmark Cafe, like she flips her hair and it just conveys so much, right? She
Yeah,
can
yeah.
do all those little things so well. And Christopher is also next level, crazy good actor. And that's why he does a lot of non-Hallmark things that are, successful and all that. If you put those two together in a mystery, I, I, I don't care. You could have them in the Gilded, and that would be the number one mystery on Hallmark,
100%. I mean, I think that
right?
that's all I'm asking for. Do that. I'm all
I
in
mean,
on
so what if
Gilded.
Bethany is supposed to play a 21-year-old? So what?
She looks very young, so
So,
that would totally pass. So, oh gosh, yes.
but yeah,
Woo.
there we
Maybe
go.
we'll have to do that. We'll have
There's the
to
new
maybe do an
casting.
episode on like who would we want paired together in future mysteries. We should do that, like a little list. That'd be
All
kind of
right. Well,
fun.
we have some time, as you said. We have
Yeah.
July 12th
July
before we
12th.
have a signed, seal,
Science.
delivered. And the other thing we could always debate too, maybe get one of the postables join us. Is signed, seal, delivery and actually a mystery? I'm not saying negative at all, but is it a mystery? There's no dead bodies ever. But do you need a dead body? No. But it's definitely
It's a, I think it's a mystery. I mean,
right.
they got a mystery element to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just, it's not a murder mystery. It's a
right.
feel good mystery,
So
usually.
yeah.
Well, what are we gonna review next week, since there is no new movie? What do we got coming?
Well, we are going to tour the globe next week, and we are going to pick out what are the best locations of all of the mysteries, the scenes where, the neighborhoods where they are, the towns where they are, the
The
cities,
setting.
wherever the aesthetics, yeah, of all the mysteries. And we're going to each share our top five. I'm guessing, like, I don't know what yours are too, but it'll probably be uh whatchamacallit, Hannah Swenson, Minnesota, and Francesca Quinn, Minnesota,
Eric,
and
don't
then
give away my
everybody
list.
else. And then
Don't give
everybody
away
else.
my
I don't
list.
I don't care who else. Um, no, I don't know. But yeah, so we'll just be talking about it. And granted, it's on what they're portraying, because obviously, like we just said, this one is not Detroit, but it conveys Detroit. They do a lot of that B-roll. You feel like you're in Detroit. crossword supposed to be in New York, but you're not. They do a really good job, I think, of creating that New York feel. So we're not going off where they actually filmed it. We're going off what the feel you get from where they filmed it is.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Sorry your Timberwolves are out. You had that ride going for a while. It was fun.
I know. No more Go Wolves.
Yeah.
Next season. Always next season. Here we go.
Okay. Until next week, Andrea. This was fun.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.